Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Education Matters. We have today a special guest. Her name is Emery Banfield. She's the education liaison from Cornerstone Policy Research. And she's here today to talk to us about the background that you'll be seeing, about workforce education. She'll be talking to us about the good touch, bad touch video that was brought up at the last school board meeting. And also, we'll be talking about a special forum that's coming up in Hollis, and we hope that all of you will attend on Common Core information and with special guests there. So welcome, Emery, and if you could help us out here and get us on track with some of this information.
Sure.
We know that Fred Bermonti had an article in the Union Leader today about workforce training or mentoring and competency-based education. What does that all mean?
Right. I watched the school board meeting. I think it's from March 10th, and I watched his presentation before your school board, and then I also watched the parents afterwards talk about the video. So this is a great subject, I think, to talk about today. Fred made a presentation to the school board on finding mentors for kids and competency-based education, which is what's going on in New Hampshire schools across the state right now. And not to take away from some new and innovative ideas, but I think that you really need to question. You need to really look at what he's proposing closely and really ask yourself, is this what you want to do in your school district? For instance, his presentation talked about having kids go with mentors and kind of do ELOs, which is like an extended learning opportunity, out into the workforce. And this is all part of workforce training. And so we're moving away from a liberal arts kind of education towards workforce training in this country. And this is all part of the Obama agenda. You can see it on the U.S. Department of Education website. They support competency-based education. So that's what we're doing in New Hampshire. It's nothing new. It's for those of you who have been around education for a while, it's called outcome-based education. It's been tried in other states. And I think what the problems that they found was that it really doesn't improve academic achievement. You focus on other things versus reading, writing, and arithmetic, those kind of core subjects. And so, I've had discussions with Fred in the past. Well, show me where this has worked. Show me where you've actually improved academic excellence and achievement in schools. And you really can't find anything. There was Virginia's governor a couple years ago had come to New Hampshire, Governor McDonnell. And I asked him, I said, you just got rid of outcome-based education in your state, didn't you? And he said, oh, absolutely. There's nothing in it that really focuses on improving academic excellence. So what you find is that schools and states do this. Parents aren't saying anything as far as their kids being able to get into top colleges or, just focusing on areas that need improvement. For instance, this morning I went to the website that the New Hampshire Department of Education's website to see how the Manchester high school students performed academically in mathematics. And the last NECAP, it showed like 27% of your high school students are proficient in math. And that's pretty pathetic. That's really sad.
So we really don't want to be substituting something else for the basic academics.
Right.
And
you don't want to see that shift. You want to see more of a focus on how do we improve academic quality. And so when I watched this presentation, there really wasn't any of that focus. It was more about, let's get the kids out of the classroom, let's get them into these, internships, something that's really not going to focus on where your real problems lie. And, I've addressed this with your school board in the past. For instance, you have a program in your school, it's called Everyday Math. It's in the K through 6 or K through 8 grades, and you've had problems with it. I've seen articles in the newspaper where parents have been angry because it doesn't prepare them for higher level math, and that's true. I've tutored kids in math. I know darn well that there are better math programs out there. So instead of focusing on improving the quality of math instruction in the school, his presentation did nothing to address where the real problems lie, and instead there was no focus on literacy. There was no focus on academics. It was all focused on, how to kind of get kids interested. And I've seen that in the STEM programs, the focus on STEM, science, engineering, technology, and math, that there's this kind of idea that we've got to get kids interested in these careers. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, we do get them interested. But if you don't prepare them academically, they're never going in that direction.
Anyway, wow. So these substitutes, if I can call them that, because a competency is substituting for something
Right.
that's academically sound. For instance, the mentors. Mr. Bramante did make mention of a mentoring, let's say, I don't know if it was a high school senior was going to mentor or did mentor with one of the aldermen at the time. I mean, is this adding to their education, or is it replacing their education? I guess the
Right.
question is.
That's a good question, because I think when you're talking about, as I watched it, I saw one of your school board members reference the robotics club, and that's always a good activity after school. It's an enrichment. It's something enriching, and I think if Mr. Bramante wanted to approach this more from an enrichment perspective, I probably would say, maybe that could be a good thing. But when you're talking about replacing, when you're talking about taking away from class time, and you can clearly already see that there's a problem with what's going on in the classes, not preparing students in the core subjects, the last thing you want to do is take them away. Now, he did mention that students might be able to take like a VLAX. That's kind of an online kind of program that you can do mathematics. That makes sense. If your kids are not able to take a class at the high school and they want to do a replacement, they're still learning the content, and so that's important. And so I don't want to say his entire idea should be tossed aside, but it really needs a critical eye. You really need to look at what are you talking about. Are you talking about taking away? And if you're taking away, what are you replacing it with?
Are we talking about students who are having a hard time with their education, getting through to graduation, and that this is the best we can do for them? Is this what we're talking about?
That's a good question, because I think that what I gathered is that your school board members have more questions for him, and I think that's why it's going to the Curriculum Instruction Committee. I noticed that one of your school board members, Art Beaudry, brought up, are these mentors going to have a background check? I mean, that's one of the things when this has gone before the House Education Committee, that was one of my questions to them. It was interesting that he brought it up, because you're going to have to do background checks on these people. You don't know who they're going with. You don't know their background. Things like that. The competencies themselves. I actually had a math professor at Johns Hopkins look at the competencies for Algebra 1 in several of our schools that you can find on their website. I actually had him look at what the New Hampshire Department of Education listed as competencies for Algebra 1, and he was highly critical. In other words, what they listed as your student would be competent in Algebra 1 if they met these competencies, he was saying absolutely not, no. They will not be competent
All right,
in
so
Algebra
these
1.
competencies are not meant to be a substitute, well, they are a substitute for the courses, but to get into college, students are not going to be able to take their competency to a university and say, would you accept my competency?
Right.
Is that?
That's a good question. How is that going to fit in when they go to apply to colleges? Because we're doing away with the Carnegie units. He said it in his presentation. We're moving away from Carnegie units. We're replacing them with competencies. Algebra 1 competencies per Professor Wilson out of Johns Hopkins University has already criticized Rochester's, Litchfield, and what's listed on the New Hampshire Department of Education, saying that these are not going to cover a full Algebra 1 course. So if you think that your kids, if they meet these competencies, are going to get the content that they need to move to Algebra 2 or higher level mathematics. That's not necessarily the case. So what you would need to do is you need to make sure that whatever they come up with in Manchester, and this is not something that he even discussed, I would take those competencies in those core academic subjects, and I'd take them to a math professor in a college and say, if my child is competent per Manchester, are they truly competent in this subject?
Are they transferable?
Yeah, are they transferable?
Transferable, and have they received a seal of approval from like you said, a math department in a college or university.
Right.
Otherwise, they're just, maybe just
Fluff.
having a student get by to
Yeah.
get through a basic low-level graduation certificate.
Right, exactly. You're exactly right, and I think that's what we've seen in other states with outcome-based education. For instance, I'm going to give you another example. This has been around for a few years. We've had it in Bedford, and several years ago, we had parents in Bedford whose son was in a personal finance class, and he was assigned a book to read for personal finance. Now, you and I think even the school board and all the parents thought, okay, if you're taking a personal finance class, you're learning how to calculate interest, how to budget, how to, go through your checkbook, things like that. And this book was actually a political book, very, very
It was in the
political.
news, yeah.
It's called Nickel and Dimed, and anybody can Google it. And it was pushing a very radical political agenda within this book. And so the parents were angry about the terminology used in the book. They were Christians, and they were angry because it talked about Jesus being a wine-guzzling vagrant. This was meaning a competency in the personal finance class in Bedford. So we've seen real problems with these competencies. I talked to Fred Bermonti a few months ago at a hearing, and I told him, I said, look, I'm not sold on this. I've seen it used in the past. It hasn't done what it's supposed to do, and he indicated, well, it depends on how you implement it, but we've seen it implemented over and over and over again in states and schools across the United States, and it just doesn't work.
And it seems to be very subjective in a way, because I think Mr. Bermonti said that the teachers would develop the competency.
Right.
And so from one school to another, these competencies are going to have
That's a good point.
different standards.
Right.
And I suppose, I don't think the Department of Education, in New Hampshire Department of Education, is going to be setting those competencies in stone.
Right.
So we have teachers from this school, that school, making a competency. Are they individualized? Is it made for a particular student or a group of students that need some extra help and getting through high school, or maybe they're interested in a subject that they just, like the one we have, aviation competency. And the students are really happy with it. Okay, well, how are we criticizing it, or how are we analyzing it, not necessarily criticizing it, but in a good way, analyzing it, and for their best and for their good, and is that going to help them to get into college? Is
Right.
that going to help them to get a job, I suppose?
In aviation, which
In
is a tough
aviation.
field.
And my daughter's an aeronautical engineer, and she's a pilot, and her education was at Daniel Webster College. And it took her 6 years to get through that course,
Yeah.
because she
Not
did
easy.
She did a double major,
Yes.
and but she has a darn good job today.
Yes.
Okay.
And you need a lot of math and science. You need that foundation.
But she needed those. She didn't need a competency to get into Daniel Webster College.
Right.
She needed her mathematics,
Yes.
and her physics, and all those sciences, and
Yes.
and all of that for engineering, and which she had.
And that's
so-
what you get K through 12. That's the foundation to then go, and same with my daughter who's in nursing school right now. Without her knowing the math and science, K through 12, there's no way. I mean, we saw 25% of the kids drop out her first year in nursing because they don't have that foundation. So going back to your scores of 27% of your kids in high school proficient in math, that to me should be the focus of your school board.
Bring that score up
Literacy,
first.
yes, focus on that instead of trying to get them into a field that they're never going to qualify for if you don't provide that foundation for them.
And they're going to need remediation, and we're
Yes.
back to the remediation problem
Yes.
again, right?
Yep.
It is just crazy. I don't know if we want to go on to the next topic.
Oh,
or,
sure.
We can talk about that, the mothers that came out and
Yeah.
talked about good touch, bad touch video that their children saw, and that they were not privy to.
Right.
And they not necessarily that they didn't want their kids to watch it or have exposure to that lesson, but they wanted to be able to be a part of it. And so now we understand, at least from what I'm understanding with Common Core, is that parents are kind of sidelined.
Yeah.
They're putting more and more to the side, and that the schools know what's best for you and for your children, and for your family, and that they don't need to consult with you anymore. So if you want to give your opinion on that one.
Well, one of the things I do as for Cornerstone is I focus on academics, but I also focus on parental rights, parental involvement in education, empowering parents, because I think that they are the best ones that can guide their children. So, yeah, I did watch I watched the presentation by Mr. Bramante, and then I also watched the parents, and I'm so happy to see parents standing up for their
Yes.
kids in this district. And quite frankly, even if your child was not subjected to this, you should be out there supporting these parents, because just because it happened to their children doesn't mean it won't happen to yours somewhere down the line. And we need to stand together and support parents when this happens to them. To just kind of give a refresher of what was shown, it was the good touch, bad touch kind of scenario. And the parents were not notified. They did not know that this video was going to be shown to their kids are in third grade. And I'm involved, or I have been involved in the past with the Child Advocacy Center, where this has really impacted individuals. And you don't want to sideline or diminish the importance of this subject, because there are real victims out there, and it's sad, and I don't question anybody's intention for trying to address the subject. But you can be doing some harm to other children when you're introducing the subject. And I think the one mother who said that her son didn't want to talk about it, her son was upset, just goes to show you that when you approach these subjects, you have to do it in a very delicate way. And you had three mothers, I think it was three mothers, that went up to talk about how offended and how bothered they were that they were not part of this process. They were cut out of the process. And you can have some real damaging effects on kids when you show these kind of videos to them.
This is another example of one size fits all.
Yes.
And we're not all made the same, and we don't all think and feel the same.
Yeah.
But we're just thrown in as being part of the herd.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, I guess it's a free country, and if parents don't like it, they can find a private school, perhaps. But we're not trying to have people, and parents leave the public
right.
school. We're here trying to address some issues and some
Make the schools
concerns,
better.
and make the
Yes.
schools better, and that
Yeah.
they can be more conducive to more people.
Right.
There are thousands of students in the state going to private school, and I've seen the Parents magazine, and the list in there is extensive.
Right.
And so, but anyway, we want parents to be involved in their children's
Yes.
education. And
Well, I had one lady tell me one time, she said this to me, and it stuck with me for years, and she said, how do you make parents more responsible by taking responsibility away from them? And I think that's an important, everybody needs to think about that. When you're taking the responsibility away from them, how does it make them more responsible? And I think that that's a real issue about irresponsible parents out there. I know that you face it in your school. We face it in every school district out there. But at the same time, you cannot just step on the other parents who are out there who want to do some good for their kids. This topic may be important to them. How about reaching out to parents? How about instead of replacing them in the classroom, you reach out to them and you contact the Child Advocacy Center, you contact the experts. These people deal with this every day. You talk to them and you say, how do we get parents educated so they can talk to their own children? You don't cut them out of the process.
we have First Amendment rights to right to conscience and freedom of religion in this country, and it's all being ignored.
Yeah.
And when you sideline the parents and you sideline the family, and you look at the child as a separate entity, a separate unit, and that he's not involved
Yeah.
in a family.
Yeah.
But and families come in all shapes and sizes.
They
but
do, and this is a touchy subject, and I don't think anybody wants to ignore it. But this idea that you can standardize how to approach the subject, and just kind of, like you said, one size fits all, and cutting the parents out, and showing something that's obviously disturbing to children, where they're uncomfortable, where you've made them uncomfortable.
And why can't the parents come and be a part of the presentation?
Exactly.
right? They could come and watch it
Exactly.
with their children.
Yeah, I had a situation with my own daughter when she was in 4th grade. She's in college now, where they showed this was part of anti-bullying. They showed a video of kids beating up each other, and she got in the car in tears because she's like, "Mom, the kids don't do this to each other." The boys in the class were high-fiving each other, going, "What a great idea." So essentially what that video showed the boys were how to beat each other up. So they thought, "Woohoo, let's go, just being goofy and stuff like that." But it had the opposite effect. It's
Right.
a video that's supposed to teach them not to bully was then actually teaching them to bully.
The same thing with the good touch, bad touch.
Exactly.
That visual has put some ideas into some of those students.
Yes.
And they may in the future carry them out, and it might not be too far away. You can have an 11-year-old, and 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old acting out what
Yeah, what they've been taught.
have in their minds now on smaller children.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a man with a beard.
Yes.
Or a mustache,
That's right.
as it was. So anyhow, well, we have another topic here. If you want to get into the forum that is coming
Sure.
about and
Yes.
that you're helping to lead.
Well, I'm not actually part of it, but I do know the parents that are going to that are putting it together. There's
great.
a parent forum in Hollis, and they're going to cover Common Core. Back about a month or two ago, the school district had put on a presentation about how they're implementing Common Core in the Hollis Brookline schools, and the parents who attended, I don't want to speak for them, but I think that they felt like it was kind of a one-sided presentation on why Common Core is good. So they decided, we want to hear from experts on the problems or what's the critical parts of Common Core. So they invited several people to speak. They are having Professor Sandra Stotsky, who was on the validation committee and refused to sign off, Jamie Gass from the Pioneers Institute, and Sid Glassner, who is a former educator and administrator. So that was his entire life dedicated to educating students. Those are the 3 panelists. Now, they did reach out to Commissioner Berry and Heather Gage from the Department of Education because they thought, if we want
balance.
they want to have some of this information presented. We want to make sure that, that people who are supportive of Common Core also have their voice heard too. They won't come. They're not coming, unfortunately. They have declined. And they've declined in other instances, too. It seems like getting, we've, at Cornerstone, we've asked them to participate in a public debate on this. They've declined. They won't even participate, which is kind of shocking to me as a parent. I would think that people would want to hear the good and the bad.
Right. The communication,
Yeah.
to me, would be the best policy.
Right. So this is going to be on Saturday, March 29th at the Lawrence Barn in Hollis, and it's from 4 to 6:30, and the public is welcome to come. I would encourage anybody who's still concerned about the standards. I know that Manchester is right now developing their own standards. I know that they've developed a draft. I looked at the draft English standards, and I'll be honest with you, I was very disappointed in what I saw. It looked like a copy and paste job. And they even reference, like, for instance, the Nebraska standards, some of the worst academic standards in the country were included. And so, but they're still developing them. I'm hoping that they can turn this around and really come up with something that is going to be, set them apart and really show that a school district can set the best standards for their students. But I would suggest that parents look at those standards. I know that the school district was reaching out to Dr. Stotsky. Make sure that they have done that. Make sure that they have brought her
Right.
in and that she's giving her feedback. She has a reputation. She was in Massachusetts. They developed the best standards in the country, and those students were performing highest in the country. You have a track record. You have something to point to when you look at the Massachusetts standards. There are other standards, too, that you can look at that were part of what Manchester was looking at. There's no reason that that this district cannot come up with the
Right,
best. But
right.
what they've put out there in draft form has me extremely concerned. So I think, I'm hoping that you'll get some people involved and get the experts involved, Dr. Milgram and Dr. Stotsky, to really help make sure that these come out as the best.
It would be great to have their seal of approval.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Like, we have consumer reports that we look to for what's the best car, the best refrigerator, whatever, and we have good housekeeping seals of approval
Good
for
point, yes.
different other things in our life. But the standards for education, there is no seal of approval. And so I've asked the superintendent, Dr. Livingston, to reach out to the experts and to the heads of departments in some of the highest universities in the area, to get their seals of approval.
Right.
And then we can be assured that when
Yes.
those students take those courses,
That
those
they're-
math and English,
yes.
they will be, you know, just totally accepted in those universities. If we're talking about BU, BC, you know, Princeton, Harvard, not to say that every student has to go there, but if those seals of approval are on those courses, then they're going to be accepted anywhere.
Right.
Right?
And there's no reason to expect less from our public schools. You know, the private schools won't touch Common Core. You know, a lot of the private schools are not going to touch it because their parents demand better.
And why should we?
Right, and why should we?
In the
There's
public
no
school.
reason why our kids in public schools should not get the best too. There's just no reason for it. We have the capacity to do better. Your district listened to parents. You know, the one thing that caught my attention through this whole process was the lack of leadership you're going to find among superintendents now. And it's really a sad, you know, when you look at your superintendent should be leading you in this effort, and I think that you're seeing some of that now, but it took a lot of pushing from parents. And when you hire a superintendent in your district, that superintendent should be able to lay out, here's my vision, here's my goal for this school. We want the best. We want Manchester to be the best. And here's how I plan on taking you there. What I found was you had a school district that was just pretty much following whatever the Department of Education says. This is what we're going to follow. And thank God you had some parents that said, you know what, we want something better. Why should the kids in Derryfield or Phillips Exeter get this kind of education? There's no reason our kids shouldn't expect it too. So, you know, this is what you should expect out of a superintendent, and hopefully your superintendent is going to start to lead this district in that direction, and she should. Every superintendent in the state should, and we're not seeing that, but you should be requiring that of your superintendent in this district.
I think Dr. Livingston is an interesting person, and I think she has her ideas, and she's brought them to other districts that she worked in, and hopefully she won't be bogged down with Common Core.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause I think
Yeah.
she can do much better than that.
I do too, and I think, you know, you've got good people here. I think they have the best interests of the kids, but they've got to show that leadership. They've got to show that they're going to do better. And I think that one presentation when they came and they said, okay, we're going to put Common Core as the floor and we're going to look to elevate that was a good presentation, and I think everybody expects that. But what came out of the draft standards did not reflect that. That is not, you're not going to replace Common Core with something that's still the floor or even go below the floor. We want something better. I think the parents in this district said, we want something better. Now prove it.
No, I think that if we can get Dr. Milgram and Dr. Stosky's start with their seals of approval,
Yes.
and go on to some of the math and science departments and you know, other places where they have the credibility
Yes.
to put a seal of approval.
They do.
Okay, and we need to look to that and not just accept what this agenda is that's coming out from God knows where on Common Core. Or
Well, the chairman of the Board of Education in New Hampshire, I asked him personally, do you support Manchester elevating their standards? Do you support them going above and beyond? And he said yes. So if everybody's in agreement that we should do better, then why are we not doing better?
well, we're your cheerleaders, Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Keep doing the good
Yes.
good job. Keep moving forward. Consult the people that you need to consult, and
let's get behind the
communicate.
district, yes.
Communicate with the community. Okay, we want to encourage you and be behind you, and you
I
know,
agree.
be proud of the work that you're doing.
Yes.
And we just don't want to sit here and be critical. We want, you know, to support the work.
I agree.
And we're the taxpayers. This is a program, education is a program that we want to support in our community. And you need to keep us abreast of the work.
Right.
And so that's why we're kind of always in your face, if you want to put
Trying
it that
to
way.
be supportive, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just want to make some suggestions. And from our point of view, we're parents, we're community members, we're, you know, residents of the town, of the city, and I think our input's important. I really do. So is there anything else, Anne Marie, that's going on? You'd like to wrap it up here with?
How much time do we have?
We have about half a minute.
Oh,
so-
about half a minute. No, I would just say if you want to contact me, I have an email list for parents, and I send out emails on education. They're more than happy to contact me. It's abanfield@nhcornerstone.org. It's ABANFIELD. Contact me anytime when it comes to the academics in the school, parental rights. When you're seeing problems in the school, I'm happy to talk to you, maybe give you some references, information, help you out. I've done that with other parents. I've done that with other schools. So contact me anytime.
Great. Well, we appreciate that. And the website is Cornerstone?
Yeah, nhcornerstone.org.
Okay,
You can
great.
contact me through the website too.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Anne Marie, for being with us today.
You're
It was a great show and very informative, and we'll see what the topic will be next week. All right, thanks. Take care.